So in this video, we're going to go ahead and cover what's going on with Tesla stock as well as some other areas that we absolutely want to pay attention to in regards to Tesla stock and the overall market. So what did we pretty much see today? Well, after the opening bell, we saw that Tesla stock initially started selling off, and its selling pressure continued all the way into the middle of today's trading session, in which we ended up pretty much consolidating, bouncing in this tight range up and down all the way till the close for today. Now, we did see that Tesla stock did close slightly higher than the close of yesterday, so this means that this is technically a green day. However, the move was very minuscule, right? It wasn't a big move at all. We barely moved upwards. Now, I want to go ahead and talk about what are some things that we want to pay attention to, but before we talk about that, let's go ahead and recap what we mentioned in yesterday's video, right? So for a while now, actually, even before yesterday's video, I've highlighted that this 215 area for Tesla is a major area that we absolutely wanted to pay attention to. And I mentioned it mostly from the perspective of just a technical approach, where we see that there's this volume pocket right over here when we look at the volume profile. And so that's where we're going to see a sharp selling off. And that's exactly what we saw. But I mentioned that in the past, we've seen this 215 area somewhat be slightly a resistance and as well as a support in the past. And so that could be an area where we see a bounce for Tesla. Now, we did see a bounce for Tesla, and it was a fairly strong bounce. However, in yesterday's video, I mentioned that although we finally saw Tesla stock bounce off that area that I mentioned it most likely would, that I said it would happen, after weeks of saying it would happen, right? I did say that there was going to be some challenges for Tesla. I didn't believe that we were automatically going to continue moving upwards into all-time highs. And so, I must admit that today's price action did catch me by surprise, as I did say that I do expect some challenges. I didn't expect it to happen immediately. I didn't expect Tesla to have, a solid green day, finally bouncing off these low levels, and then pretty much the next day moving relatively flat. But we'll go ahead and talk about what we're currently seeing. Now, what did we, before we actually talk about what we saw from an economic standpoint, let's talk about what I saw on Twitter recently. So, the Tesla bears are saying this, right? So someone on Twitter tweeted that Colin Campbell, the vice president for the powertrain engineering at Tesla, departed today, which is a major setback at a critical time. As posted last Tuesday, expecting more high-level departures. CFO Kirkhorn left, now Campbell. Who's next, right? So that's pretty much what the Tesla bears on Twitter are saying. Now, I want to kind of debunk this in a sense by saying I don't necessarily believe that the selling pressure from Tesla was all contributed to someone from a high level exiting Tesla, because if we actually take a look at the S&P 500 index ETF SPY, we see the same pattern, right? In fact, if we take a look at the NASDAQ index ETF QQQ, we see the same pattern. Now, there's no denying that Tesla does have a huge weighting in these indexes, but I can't imagine that just because one high-level executive left that the overall entire market sold off. There's something deeper than that, right? So let's go ahead and talk about what's actually happening. So, one of the things I've been driving home for a while is paying attention to the 10-year Treasury. As I said, we're approaching these high levels that we haven't seen for a while, and this is a potential threat for the overall market, right? Because as I said in yesterday's video and prior videos, when the 10-year Treasury is high, well, that drains liquidity from equities. Why is that? Well, why would an investor want to invest in, something risky as stocks, as they've been pretty much having a lot of uncertainty recently, when the 10-year Treasury is guaranteeing that you'll get this 4% return? It's pretty high. And so investors are pouring more capital in to the 10-year Treasuries. And so that's what's causing these Treasuries to go up higher, right? Which is, possibly causing this liquidity drain for the markets. But on top of that, we see that government or Japanese Treasury, 10-year Treasuries are also increasing. Now, we know that Japan is one of the biggest creditors for our debt. And so what's happening here is that we're possibly going to see more capital leaving the markets, right? Because why would a Japanese investor want to invest in U.S. 10-year Treasuries when their Treasuries are going up now too, right? It doesn't make sense for them to even buy U.S. Treasuries when their Treasuries are going up. Now, we know that the delta between their Treasuries and our Treasuries is there's still a big difference there. But one of the things you have to understand with Japanese investors is that when they go ahead and try to invest in our Treasuries, they take the risk of currency exchange, or oftentimes the difference between the yen and the dollar can vary, where even if they get a higher yield from our 10-year or our bonds, right, they could still lose out. So we're seeing that, less capital is going to be flowing into our treasury yields, which means that their yields may end up going even higher, which causes more pain for the overall markets, right? So that's something that we absolutely want to go ahead and pay attention to. But what else do we want to pay attention to, right? Well, one of the things I've highlighted is the Jackson Hole summit that's happening on Thursday, right? Basically it's the symposium where we have a bunch of economic, I can't think of the word right now, but just a bunch of finance ministers. We're going to have a lot of members from the Federal Reserve going in, and we're going to hear a speech from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, and we're going to most likely hear an update on monetary policy, right? And so that's something that has always shaped the market. I mean, if you go back to 2021 and 2022, if you look at the Jackson Hole Symposium conferences, right, we see that they have a big shift in the market. So that's something we want to pay attention to. But another name that I called out that we absolutely want to pay attention to is Nvidia, as we have Nvidia's earnings coming out tomorrow, and Nvidia is a huge power player when it comes to AI, as they pretty much own 80% of the market for GPUs, and GPUs are primarily what's fueling AI. And so what we saw for the QQQs is that let's go to a weekly view, we saw that pretty much a lot of stocks, right, including Tesla, have benefited from the buzzword of AI. And so, until recently we started having a sell-off, but pretty much the entirety of this year has been pretty much very bullish. And so we want to see, is the AI hype actually dead, or is it going to continue? And that's why there's a big focus on Nvidia, right? But we did see Nvidia pretty much close down today if we look at a 5-minute view. Now, this could make sense in the idea that maybe investors are taking money off the table and selling off right before the earnings, as although it's most likely that Nvidia will outperform, there's still no certainty on how the valuation will be and also what the forward guidance will be. And I believe that the forward guidance is going to have much more weight on Nvidia than the actual earnings itself. And so that's what we currently have seen with the overall markets. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at Tesla stock, and let's talk about what are some things that we want to look at. Now, I did mention yesterday's video that I did add into Tesla in my long-term portfolio after Tesla recently bounced up from this low. And one of the things I mentioned is that, what I like to do is I like to not just buy something when it's selling off aggressively, but I like to wait for something to sell off and then, pretty much bounce up and show signs of confirmation. Now, again, it doesn't mean that Tesla can't fall down further. In fact, Tesla could go even below the $200 range. We're going to have to go ahead and see what ends up happening. Are we going to continue seeing a hawkish rhetoric from the Federal Reserve? Is Nvidia going to contribute to more selling for the markets? Is it going to help, pretty much withhold the markets upwards? I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty, and towards the end of the week, that's when we're finally going to have a clear answer. And so one of the things I've been telling the Push and Profit private group is that I've made numerous projections concerning the monetary policy, interest rates, and unfolding the economic landscape. And, my foresight has been remarkably accurate, right? Outpacing a lot of pundits, economists, and commentators in this space. But, I often say that I don't have a crystal ball. And I want to emphasize this to just, have us recognize that when there's moments where there's not a lot of clarity, well, that's an area where you want to step back and observe. So right now, there's not a lot of clarity with Tesla stock and the overall markets. And so, for me personally, right, and what I've been telling members of the Push and Profit private group is this is an area that, we don't want to play guessing games, right? We don't need to participate every single day, especially if you're a market participant, regardless if you're investing long-term or trading in the short term. You don't need to trade every single intraday. And if you're investing, you don't need to buy every single day, right? So obviously, patience has a big benefit when it comes to participating in the market. And one of the things we want to see is how is everything going to play out. Now, I believe by the end of the week, we'll have a better idea of how the landscape is looking. But right now, there is a lot of uncertainty. So again, I want you guys to let me know in the comment section below. What are your thoughts, just on Tesla in the short term and on the long term? Let me know if you guys think Nvidia is going to end up beating its earnings tomorrow, and if their forward guidance is going to, be fairly well, because that could lift off the market, as Nvidia is pretty much one of the stocks. We know that the QQQs are held up by the Magnificent Seven, as they call it, right? So definitely a lot of stuff that we absolutely want to pay attention to, and right now is not a time to play a guessing game. if Tesla continues to go up, great. I'm still invested in Tesla in the long term. And I want to actually share this tweet from Elon Musk that I thought was funny. So we have Stephen Mark. He's actually he has a channel, Solving the Money Problem. You guys may have seen him. He's a big Tesla channel, and he tweeted, "Legacy automakers are about to have their Kodak moment." Someone said, "What the f is Kodak?" And Elon Musk responded with a laughing emoji. And then he also responded again, saying, "It's unfortunately trending that way for many automakers," saying that a lot of these automakers are going to meet their death, right? You mentioned some companies do understand, but their pace of change is nonetheless slow. Tesla is trying to be as helpful as it can to other car makers as possible with the transition to autonomous vehicles. We open source our patents, provide access to our supercharging networks, and have invited them to license our self-driving AI system. So, this is why I'm still fundamentally bullish on Tesla in the long term, regardless of, right now there's still uncertainty with Tesla. I still think that right now, just like what Stephen Mark said from Solving the Money Problem and what Elon Musk said, a lot of these legacy automakers, we've seen it in the past, they're struggling when it comes to transitioning to the EV space, and we know that the EV market is going to continue growing. I mean, recently we saw Lamborghini just unveiled that they're going to be releasing their first electric Lamborghini, and we know that there's a lot of funding from the government incentivizing this transition from EVs, and so we know that EVs are going to continue being dominant. And right now, Tesla is still having a big market share in the EV space. And I believe that, as a lot of these legacy automakers struggle, that's going to continue for them to, it's going to still continue to be much more difficult, while Tesla's goal is not really, they don't have the issue of actually making sales. They're just in the pretty much in the terrain of expanding and actually scaling up. So this is why, I'm bullish on Tesla in the long term. If I do see Tesla break above this descending trend line, I'll go ahead and add Tesla again more into my long-term portfolio, right? But again, you guys should never just copy any what trades or investments I say on this channel. You guys should always do your due diligence and always trade and invest in whatever you see value in. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and end this video right over here. Again, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys on this next video right over here. Take care, guys.